Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of the Sheffield Wednesday Review podcast. If you've not listened to part 1, well, that is where we review the Sheffield Wednesday game and that away point, that mysterious, elusive away point, which we finally got our hands on. So do check that out. Here we are in part 2, where we're going to look at transfers that we think are going to happen. There's one in particular that we think is going to happen. There are a few rumours that we think have got a good chance of happening, and 1 or 2 rumours that we'll go through that we think is just that, idle rumours. And we'll also talk about who could be going from the club. We are above the numbers of registration now, so people have to leave, unfortunately. Jimbo and I will discuss in this second part of the podcast just who that might be and who the likely candidates are to go where.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
We're going to look at the transfers that have happened, that look like happening, and some that may or may not happen, both in and out, in part 2 of this podcast. We're going to see a lot of movement today, I think. The rumour mill's just too active for us not to, really. One man who we would be very surprised if we don't see with a Luton scarf or a Luton shirt or however it is that they parade him, or doing the rounds of Tesco's meal deal or whatever it may be. I don't even know where we go here. Lasse-Nordas? Are we having that?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, if it's Lassie, I hope he's as good as the dog of the same name, because he was a good old fella, that Lassie, wasn't he? There's another one reference for you all guys out there.
Darts, snooker, and
Lassie the dog.
Lassie the dog. Jesus Christ!
We got to keep all ages entertained here, mate.
One for you 80s heads, that is, isn't it?
Anyway, he's not a dog, or at least I don't think he is, and I hope he's not.
I hope he's
a 6'4".
I hope he's a fox in a box. Though,
well, that would be very, very handy. Yes, that would be handy. He's a 6'4" striker from Tromsø in Norway. I suspect you don't know anything about him.
I don't even know how to pronounce his name.
No, I have not a clue.
I don't know what that little O above the A is. And
that's what got me.
We'll learn in time, hopefully. It seems fairly nailed on.
If you could announce a sign-in without announcing a sign-in, Matt Bloomfield did it after the game yesterday, by all accounts.
Well, he did in the fact that he didn't say, but what his face was.
He had smiles all over his face when he was turning it down.
But even before that, Tromsø had basically said it was a club in the Championship. It's going to be one of the biggest deals in that club's history, in Tromsø's history. It's only going to be, I mean, I did the currency conversion. It's 35 million Norwegian kroner going up to 40 million. If it ever gets to the 40 million, you're looking at, I think, 2.8 million pounds. So it's good business from Luton, even if it's their biggest one. But, you know, they've said he's gone to do the final.
Because they're in their close season in Norway, and he's in a training camp, or was in a training camp, and he's left that training camp for negotiations with us. And generally that suggests that the deal between the clubs are done, at least.
Yeah, and then you add into the mix that Fabrizio Romano's come out and said,
when the governor comes out, you know that we're in business, don't you?
He's just transfer specialist, isn't he? I heard him talking about all of Luton's strikers, but when he does talk about one from Europe, you'd expect it to be quite nailed on. But actually, he retweeted or reposted the information from a Norwegian journalist, so it's not all him, but it did.
It's legit, isn't it?
Multiple sources are saying this, and then when you get to the post-match interview, and then Bloomfield is asked about, I'm going to call him Lassie for now. I'm going to ask about Lassie, and he says nothing right now. I think that there's plenty of smoke, and probably a bit of fire as well.
I think there's some fire in his belly, that is for sure. Can't say I know a great deal about him. but I do have a friend who specialises in analysing Scandinavian leagues, and I know he'll listen to this podcast, Steve Wiss, and I've mentioned him to Steve. I said, what are we getting? And he said, we're getting a good centre forward who's got a range of improvement in him, and probably better than his is the bare goal statistics. He's in a league and a club that don't score too many goals, so in our sort of league, he'd expect him to score more goals. So that's promising.
Because he got something like 9 in 30 odd games, didn't he, last season? But what were you saying
twice in Europe?
Before we got on the mics, you were saying something about the Norwegian league not being particularly high scoring anyway.
Yeah, no, it's not always high scoring. Both ends of their league are played in the cold snap time of their weather, so it does get cold up in Norway as well, so that can impact it. So yeah, not necessarily always the high scoring. During the middle of it can be, but Tromsø not always the most high scoring team in that league. So we think that one's going to happen. We'd expect that to happen at some point on deadline day, but the rumour mill really won't stop. So since we last did a podcast, there was a sort of article that did the rounds about the town, inquiring about Ricky-Jade Jones at Peterborough. Obviously, the last transfer window, towards the end of it, once we sold Chio, there was talk that we'd looked at Kwame Poku at Peterborough, but he then went and got injured. It's Jones, actually. It's Ricky-Jade, isn't it? It's his first name. So just Jones. How many Jones do we want, by the way? It's in a similar mould to Poku, so you can see why we'd do that. I just wonder if that was before Ali arrived at the club as a sort of secondary option, if we couldn't get Ali, because it has gone a bit quiet on that one. That was for sort of Thursday going into Friday, that rumour. And of course, we got Ali late Thursday night where it was confirmed. So I wonder if that one's dead in the water, but you could certainly see why he's a player we would like.
Well, pace. He's a quick lad, and yeah, I think there's a good relationship between Luton and Peterborough. I mean, they've got, dare I say his name, Joe Taylor from Peterborough last time around.
Glad it's you opening up the can today, not me.
Let's move on from that one. But yeah, I suppose that Darren McAntony knows how much money he wants for that guy, but he also knows the situation that Luton are in. He's a fairly shrewd operator, isn't he? So I don't know. I don't know about that one. I wouldn't say no, but I think your assessment may be correct there.
However, on Sunday, well, let's come on to Sunday's ones in a minute. Richard Coney. I mean, this is the January soap opera, isn't it, of Luton Town. So a fourth bid went in as we were recording the last podcast, as we referred to, up to 7 million, 4 million up front, 3 million in add-ons. And all of a sudden, 2 days later, he's out of the Wycombe squad by mysterious injury, having played on Tuesday night. Fourth bid goes in, which we're led to believe was rejected, but it hasn't actually publicly been said so. But he doesn't play for Wycombe on Saturday. That immediately fuels the fire of transfers. And all of a sudden, in light of a rumour of Elijah's, which we'll come on to when we go through the ones out in a minute, you can kind of see the revolving door, seeing Richard Coney coming in.
You can see it, but I did hear secondhand from the Wycombe press team that he genuinely was injured. Now, I mean, that could be brinksmanship, couldn't it? You never know, but I'm not sure on that one. I think that they've sort of upped it, well, they reportedly upped it by £1 million each time and done it that way. And I'm just not convinced that Wycombe would sell in the position they're in. Now, if he walks through the door, I'll be delighted, because everything I've heard about Richard Coney is that he's the real deal from people that have followed Wycombe. And they've said, no, he is in that league. It's not a fluke. He's really good. And 19 goals suggested. So if he comes in the door, I'll be delighted. I'm not sure that 4 rejected bids and the money that has been offered is worth as much to Wycombe as getting to the Championship and then either keeping him and maybe him spearheading their survival bid in the Championship next season, or selling him anyway when he gets there and earning a hell of a lot more money. But the fly in the ointment of that, isn't it, is his contract situation where it's up in the summer and he hasn't signed a new one. So I'd be 55% that it wouldn't happen. No, actually, I'd be more of a Brexit. What was it? 48, 52. We'll do that one. Yeah, it'd be more of that one. But so I could see it happening, but I wouldn't begrudge Wickham for just putting their foot down and say no. They've also got a bit of money, haven't they, Wickham, now? They've got the people that own them, they're loaded. So maybe they don't need to.
Let's hope that's one lever that does benefit you and I, and that happens over the next 24 hours. Well, it'll be less than that by the time that you listen or watch this podcast. 2 rumours that came to the surface on Sunday from the journalist Alan Nixon, former journalist of The Sun, still fairly respected journalist, doesn't usually get an awful lot wrong, certainly when Luton's concerned. Suggests that we're interested in Lewis O'Brien on loan from Nottingham Forest, and Joel Ward we've inquired permanent and on loan from Crystal Palace. Let's do Lewis O'Brien first, because we've played against him an awful lot in the Championship. He ran that Huddersfield team that beat us in the playoff semi-final that year. That season he looked really, really good, and if ever he came to the football club at any point in among that season, I'd have been absolutely delighted, because he hasn't really ever had a look in at Forest since they got promoted. He's been out on loan here, there and everywhere. He was out on loan at Los Angeles in the MLS towards the end of last season. Been out with DC when Wayne Rooney was there as well. So he's done the MLS tour. Kind of get the impression that he's back in England and wants a club in England. We would be good for him, but there are other clubs interested in him. Led to believe he wants a club higher up the division, which would be against us. But if they choose not to go for him, maybe he comes here for some football. He would be absolutely ideal as one of these pivots in this team, because he can take the ball under pressure. He's got a good passing range. He can carry it forward. We saw that for Huddersfield against us. He's got a shot on him as well. He's absolutely everything that Matt Bloomfield's midfield looks for.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from the games that we've seen, and that Huddersfield game in particular. He just looked a very neat and tidy footballer, but with a bit of purpose about him, which would fit in nicely. When you hear things like he wants a team further up the league, I can't begrudge him that, and he probably does, because if he's going to drop out of a Premier League team like Forest, albeit that he didn't play, and then go to a team that could potentially be in League One next season, depending on what the deal is, whether it's a loan or permanent, then I could see why you probably wouldn't want that. But if he came, yeah, I'm with you. I think it'd be an excellent acquisition, and it would definitely fit the player with something to prove model, wouldn't it? So, yeah, based on what I've seen, really, I mean, you watch more MLS than me, which is not hard, because you could watch 5 minutes and you'd watch more MLS than me. I don't know what he's done over there, but when I've seen him in the flesh, good player.
Yep. Yeah, I watch it for work purposes as well as anything else. Yeah, he is a good player. He played well in that LAFC side that has the likes of Olivier Giroud up front. So you can understand why he'd want to be a higher Championship side. But ultimately, if it's a loan deal, they've got to pay whatever wages that Forest want to pay, and it looks like we're prepared to do that. Let's hope the others aren't. I kind of don't see that one happening, I have to admit. Or if he goes out on loan, I think it will be somewhere else. However, I do see Joel Ward happening for a few reasons. First and foremost, in the 4 games Matt Bloomfield's played, that right-back position's just been a nightmare. It's nothing against Hashi. It's certainly nothing against Rue Waters. Rue Waters is a young lad learning his trade who probably should have been here for a year learning his trade before we threw him right into the deep end. But we lost Chio towards the start of the season, and however many injuries we've had at the back has forced our hand in that regard. And his own injury, he's still coming back from that as well, isn't he? So that's fair enough. So Joel Ward, 35-year-old Crystal Palace right back, hasn't played in the Premier League this season, will not play in the Premier League while Daniel Munoz is at Crystal Palace, because he's a level up on Joel Ward. That's not anything against Joel Ward. He's a steady defender, which is exactly what we want at right back right now, particularly when we've got Issy Jones or whoever on that right-hand side. Fireworks going off outside, obviously celebrating the imminent arrival of our Norwegian. But solid as a rock right back, 35 years old, done the Championship at Crystal Palace, been in the Premier League for Crystal Palace an awful lot. Probably not going to be anything special, but again, when we spoke about Mads Andersen, all we want is solid defenders. And if Rue Waters needs someone to learn off in that right back position, he would be ideal for that with the raft of experience he's got. Apparently, we've looked at it on a permanent. I would imagine there's some sort of coaching element to any permanent deal because he's 35. That's not generally where Luton go without a coaching. You know, when we gave Sheehan his last contract, that had a coaching element to it. That's the only sort of relevant one that I can kind of think of. However, if we got him on loan till the end of the season, just to build Rue Waters up for the start of next season, that would make more sense to me. But however it happens, I can see this one happening. He's getting no football at Palace. They're not in the Carabao Cup. I can't remember how they got on in the FA Cup, but if they're still in the FA Cup, that's all he's going to get. He's not going to play in the Premier League. 35 years old, he'll be wanting to play football. It's a position of need now. I don't think it was. It's not a position I'd want to spend huge amounts of money on because we've spent huge amounts of money on that position, as I've said earlier in the transfer window. But ultimately, that position is leaking a little bit right now. So if we can shore it up for 6 months at least without spending too much money on it, I'm all for that. I think that would be a really good signing, and I think Rue Waters would benefit immensely from it.
Yeah, I think so. The only thing against that signing would be the age, I think, because it isn't a Luton signing, but I think he's in all the Crystal Palace sides that he's been in over the years. He's been there maybe a decade or so, hasn't he? They've looked fairly solid, and yeah, I think that would be a good option in right back in the formation that Bloomfield wants to play, because it'd be required to be a right back and not bombing on as a right wing back, which he wouldn't be able to do. You wouldn't imagine. But he's quite tall, very physical, and considering the way that Sheffield Wednesday got down the flanks, it would be a useful acquisition. Because if we were talking about Lamine and the way they close the gaps down the middle, if then they're going to only get down the wide areas, then he's got a lot of nous down there, and that would make a sensible signing. If I was in charge of the purse strings, I'd probably make that a loan deal. But it's if I don't know how much he'd cost really if he's not been playing and it's going to be literally his last contract. You'd imagine maybe you can get him on cheap.
Yeah, or a loan with a position to buy if it all works out, or something like that. I mean, Rue Waters is the future at right back. I'm pretty comfortable with that. Maybe in the position that we're in, he's not the present. Maybe in 10 games' time and we're safe, fingers crossed, or 12 games' time or whatever it is, and we've got a couple of dead rubbers to finish off the season, then you're comfortable putting him back in at right back. But right now, we need that left-hand side of the opposition shored up. We need to stop crosses coming in. We need that physicality of anyone with the cross comes from the other side to the back stick that can head the ball away and do his own job. And at 35 years old, if you can't organise defenders, then what have you been doing for the last 15 years? So that we could do with that as well.
Well, leadership as well, isn't it? If you're going to add Cal, that's one of the reasons. I mean, he's got the football inability as well, but he's 32 now. But you
can talk to McGuinness, can't he, Ward, on his inside and just guide him around the game, especially if Mads Andersen stays in the side, so Cal's only a bit part player as well. It's another option. It strikes me as a cheaper option. I don't think Palace will want too much of his wages paid or anything like that. They can only register 25 as we can. So if they need to get one off the books, it would make sense to get a 35-year-old off the books. And that's one I can see happening in one shape or form. So we see at least 2 incomings, potentially 3 if Kone does arrive. We're already overbalanced in terms of our 25. I think we're 2 above our 25-man squad. They don't need to be registered till Tuesday, so that's absolutely fine. But it does mean that at least 2 are going to have to disappear from that, or we're going to have to keep players who aren't registered. Listen, Tom Lockyer's not going to be registered now. I think that's fair to say. Now that he looks like it's going to have to go through a second operation, that one's going to wait until the summer, I think. It would be interesting to know an update on where Ted and Mengi is and whether he's going to be registered, because when Matt referenced it. He hadn't signed Cal Naismith, and that second centre half wasn't. We were using Holmes, but didn't always look comfortable. Now he's got a more comfortable option in Mads, and he's got Cal. So it'd be interesting to see if he still intends to register Ted Mengi or give him the rest of the season off to rebuild, ready to be back on the first day of pre-season. But if we are going to re-register Ted Mengi, we've already got to get rid of 2. We've got 27 at the minute. And if 3 more come in, we're going to have to get rid of quite a lot of people. So who can we possibly get rid of? Well, the rumour mill hasn't surfaced for Victor Moses. However, the journalists on Friday did their own rumour milling and asked Matt Bloomfield about it. And he said that Victor was available for selection for the 2 games prior to Sheffield Wednesday, but wasn't chosen in the squad. So that suggests he's out of favour. He then also said he wouldn't stand in his way if the right move came up. So you kind of see Victor Moses having played his last game for Luton Town.
Based on all the players that have come in, it would make sense. They caveat it all the time. If something doesn't happen, he stays, and they're happy to have him. I don't think there's been any issues with him as a person. It's just it hasn't really fired, has it? We thought I do recall in the mists of time and the amount of time we've been here doing this, that when he first came in, I thought he had the potential to be not the Ross Barkley mould, because Ross Barkley's unique and obviously in a different position, but a Ross Barkley-esque signing that brings some top level quality. And he's probably had one good game where he sort of stood out, and the rest of the times probably hasn't lived up to what we were expecting. So on that basis, I think that would make sense, that if they could find a deal to move him on.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's only signed until the end of the season anyway, so it wouldn't be the hardest contract to get out of if he can find another club. Cauley Woodrow, Matt was asked after the game on Saturday why he was left out of the squad, and he confirmed it was because of transfer speculation. There's been an awful lot of rumours that Wrexham are interested in him. I wouldn't have thought that they're the only club, because he has got a good record in League One, Cauley, so you could kind of see a few promotion-chasing League One sides looking at him. Even if it's only on loan, that would still help us in terms of our numbers. Again, it came with the caveat that Cauley's very much part of our squad, and if he's still here on Tuesday morning, that's great. But there is speculation around him. We do need to get rid of players. Therefore, if an offer comes in, I would expect it to be taken.
Yeah, and I think so. The fact that they've brought in Tello Asgard would limit his chances even further, I think, because Tello can come in and just play he can play every game, Tello, because he's played a lot of games for Wigan. He's young, fit, and barring any lack of form, then he would play there anyway. And Woodrow wasn't getting a look in before he came along, so I think that knocks him down the pecking order even further. I think it probably just makes sense for Cauley. He's been a bit part player for a long time now. 30
years old as well. He's heading towards that time where we look to move on from, isn't he? Generally 31, 32 and you're out the door.
Because he hasn't had that run in the team, and he hasn't always been played in the position that he probably thought he would when he came in, and Nathan Jones said he was a marquee signing, which he would have been at the time probably if they played him in the position we thought he'd play. But then the emergence of Morris and Adebayo at the time made that difficult, and then he did mess around saying he could maybe transform into a 10, and I've never been convinced that he could, even though he's done a fairly decent job, and he's got a lot of criticism, I think probably a bit more than he deserves. But I think it makes sense for him to move on and reignite his career for the last few years of it. He has been doing that coaching stuff, isn't he, at Luton? So maybe there's something of that in it for him somewhere along the line. But right now, I just think it would make sense, and we'd always have that Norwich goal, wouldn't we?
We will indeed, and that Crystal Palace equaliser as well. Yeah, that's that's for sure. It looks like the second spell of Cauley Woodrow could come to an end on Monday. To Tom Holmes, Mike McGrath of the Daily Mail, I think he is, generally spot on with transfers as well. He's rumoured that Tom Holmes is an interest for Championship clubs. If he wants to lose his man like he did at Oxford, if the Championship clubs are Derby and Portsmouth, yes please. And European clubs, that's as far as it went, the rumour. But you would imagine he's another one who could quite easily be leaving on Monday by virtue of the fact that Mads has overtaken him in the pecking order. We've got Cal. At some point, Amari Bell will come back from his injury, who can cover in that left centre-half spot. And depending on what happens with Ted Menga, we've also got Reece Burke as well. Now that we're only playing 2 centre-halves, you always had the feeling in January, and of course Christ is making his way through the ranks as well. You always had the feeling that a centre-half was going to leave in January. You just didn't know which one and in which circumstance. You could kind of see that it would be Tom Holmes.
There was some early signs of promise, and his sort of no-nonsense style defending we praised, and we must say that. But I think he's found it difficult in the last few games, and certainly when you require one less centre half in the formation, which we have been calling for, so is fine. Then I think it does suggest that he would be lower down the pecking order, which he would have been anyway if Luton got a hell of a lot of centre backs, and if they'd have all been fit, he'd have been last on the rung, and that's no disservice to him. That's just where he came from and where all the other players have been and have played. And, I think he's found himself in the team, because of the formation where we're playing 3 centre halves, but also out of absolute necessity. And yeah, I don't think that is the case anymore. So that would make sense. I wonder whether it would be a loan or a permanent though.
Yeah, a mixture of the two, maybe.
Yeah.
Loan with a view to buy, that sort of thing, because you would imagine we'll assess the centre-back situation in the summer anyway. Certainly with regards to Tom, we'll know exactly where we are in that regard. Yeah, someone's got to go. I think if you include Amari Bell, I think we've got 8 players who can play centre-half, and we're only playing 2 of them. So just normal mathematics tells you someone's got to go. If there's interest in Holmes, it would make perfect sense. The other rumour that done the rounds in amongst the time of the Richard Kone rumours was that West Brom were looking at Elijah Adebayo potentially for a £7 million deal. They've since signed Will Lancashire on loan from Tottenham, but he's only on loan till the end of the season, so they might still go in for Elijah, bearing in mind that he would be a permanent deal and that they could get 4 months out of him and then he'd be their main man at the start of next season. They've got injuries to Daryl DK. There's a surprise. He always seems to be injured, that bloke. And Josh Madger, he's injured for a good portion as well. So they might still want a second striker. Tony Mowbray liked him when he was at Sunderland, spoke highly of him after the playoff semi-final that we played against them. So I can see where this one's certainly come from. And if Kone does come in, I can certainly see Eli going out. Probably could still see Eli going out anyway, because, you know, we're led to believe that Ali can play through the middle. We're only going to play one up front as an actual centre forward anyway. And we're getting we think the Norwegian fella's all but signed. Again, it's an area where if you're only playing one up front and you've got at least 4 options, something's got to give. And that's a lot of money. And that will recoup an awful lot of the business that we've done this month. It kind of makes sense. Would I be sorry to see Eli go? Absolutely. However, he is a player who is hot or cold. He does miss an awful lot of chances, as referenced by the fact that he's missed the most big chances of any striker in the Championship this season. And we're kind of in that position now where we can't miss any more big chances. We need them to go into the back of the net, hence why we're persisting with Carlton Morris, I think. £7 million for a guy who at best is only going to be playing in a rotation role. It does, if that is the deal, does suggest that you could see that taking place on Monday, especially if Richard Kone comes in.
Yeah, I mean, if he came in, I think that would be a nailed-on reason to part ways. But I think it probably is still strengthened by Lassie coming in from Tromsø.
You ain't going near that surname.
I'm not going near, no, not going. You're not going to get me on it until somebody tells me how to pronounce it properly. But yeah, he's 6'4", a central striker. I think that pushes Elijah down the pecking order a little bit, and he, because of what he did in the Premier League, it's not worked out for him this season, but it's not worked out for a vast many players at Luton. So you could take the gamble and say, oh, it's just down to this one poor season, because he's still got double figures in a relegation side in the Premier League and was being looked at by Everton and it would not surprise me in the slightest, like, if a team like West Brom were after him, and he'd still be a saleable asset because of that Premier League season. And you were totting it up the last podcast, so how much money potentially spent on this. You recoup a lot of that by selling him on, and it'll be kind of a sad day, because on his day, fantastic, unplayable, but he's just not had. Well, he's had about 2 of those this season, really, hasn't he? That's where his goals have come in bunches. So it probably makes sense all round if be like the one that, if it'd be the one that what could have been if he goes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but it's also one that has been as well. He's been a massive part of this club. We won't write him off until he's actually gone, and we will do a full transfer window roundup. We'll record that Tuesday night. Should be out to you early on Wednesday morning. And again, then we'll address the actuals rather than the rumours with regards to Eli. The other one that Town fans are not so much fearing, but it will be a sad day if it happens, is Pelly Ruddock Mpanzu, who hasn't made the squad for the first time in a long time. I think it's going on 18 months that he didn't make the squad, the matchday squad yesterday. You look at the midfielders that were on the bench yesterday. Liam Walsh stayed on the bench. Countless other sort of midfield options that are there. Marvellous also stayed on the bench, I should just say. Obviously, we play 3 midfielders as well. Game time is already pretty infrequent for Pelly, and there was a couple of comments actually on the last podcast why we've not spoken about Pelly in the team. We just don't see which one of those roles Pelly can fill as a number 2 option, in that if we play the 3 in midfield with 1 pivot and 2 in front, the pivot's going to be Lamine or Marv, and the front ones, you kind of got Asgard, you've kind of got Clark, you've kind of got Walsh, you've got Nelson. They're all probably ahead of Pelly right now. That's why we've not spoken about him when we've been talking about teams. And that in itself would suggest that if we need a player off the books, there's a certain manager not too far down the road who managed him through his best period at the club, who came out on record yesterday saying he still wants to sign players if they're the right players. Well, he's clearly going to be the right player for Charlton. That would make perfect sense, having just let Alan Campbell leave there to go to Dundee United.
It will be another sad one.
The saddest one, actually.
Yeah, but it won't be a surprise.
No.
I think we've been seeing for the entire season the last days of Pelly. Him not getting in the side. Sometimes even when you think we need somebody in there, and I understand people's reasoning, it's, he gets the club, he's got passion for the club and stuff like that, but, he's 30 now, and he wasn't really a fixture much in the Premier League season, played mostly off the bench when he did. I think we've seen the Luton life cycle of Pelly Ruddock Mpanzu, and it'll probably never happen again. Certainly for Luton. Whether it happens for another club, I don't know. Where he goes through all the leagues, scores through all the leagues, is a massive part of that journey. I went at the weekend to go and get my hair cut, and I walked past the mural on the side of the George II on Bute Street. It's Mick Harford and it's Pelly Ruddock Mpanzu. It just sort of shows it's his famous pose from Wembley at the Championship game where he's spraying the bottle like that champagne bottle, and I just hope that sort of thing stays forever, because there's no question, and this was the case seasons ago, that man's a Luton legend, and I'm not having any other statement other than that. And I'll fight you in the car park with my top off if you've got an alternative opinion, because he is a Luton legend, and if and when he goes, it'll be a sad day. But time and tide, I guess, waits for no man.
Please don't have an alternative opinion, because no one needs to see that in their lives. But yeah, you are right. The one thing I would say, though, is if he leaves this club without having had a testimonial or some sort of benefit of some kind, that would be a real shame, because he very much deserves that. You know, plenty of players in the past have had testimonials that have been deserved, but not as deserved as Pelly. Like you say, he's gone right through the divisions with us. He's gone from the Conference to the Premier League. He's a huge reason why we got there in the first place. And he's a huge reason why, you know, we've done everything that we've done. So were he to leave the club and not have the recognition of whatever that time at the club is, that would be a shame. But equally, football and sentiment in our position have to go out of the window. So I would take that, but I would still hope that there was room to do something with regards to the special role that he's played at the club.
I hope that he's treated that way, because there's not many players in this day and age that stay at football clubs for 10 years, regardless of whether they've gone through leagues and had a successful period like he's had. It almost is unheard of these days, and which is probably why you don't hear that much about testimonials anymore. Because back in the day, that you'd always have one club man.
Well, wages have improved as well, haven't they? That, you know, back in the day, the testimonial was for the player to, you know, have a little bonus. These days, the money tends to go to charity, doesn't it? For those few people that do have testimonials. I think the last testimonial I think I can remember was Jamie Carragher had one at Liverpool, and he gave all of his, I think, to Old Hay Hospital. So, you know, I mean, maybe that's why they don't happen no more. It's an awful lot to do for, you know, charitable benefits come along, like the club have their own charity of the year and things like that, don't they? Which also never used to be a thing. So maybe that's it. But there should still be some recognition, whether it's something at Power Court or whether it's, you know, something, because this guy's been absolutely massive. What is he? Somewhere near the top 10 in our all-time appearance makers. If he's not in the top 10, he's very, very close to it, isn't it? Over 400 appearances. You know, that needs to be recognised. That's not to say he's definitely going, but again, if you're not in the matchday squad and we need to get rid of some places to free up for registration of new players, you know, 2 and 2 sometimes equals 4 in this situation. One man who wouldn't impact the registration in terms of the fact he's under 21, but you could see going out, is JJ. Obviously played yesterday. Didn't do anything wrong, didn't do anything spectacular, but he's at a time in his football development where he needs to be playing regularly. I don't think he's going to play regularly in a relegation battle. I still think Alfie Doughty's going to be our left back when everyone's fit, firing and up to full speed, because you've got to bear in mind we've still got Heath Chong to come back as well. Then we've got Amari Bell, who can cover at left back, and hopefully whatever his latest injury is, he can recover from and get back to the Amari Bell that we know. We've got Cal Naismith, who can go out there and play left back as well. And if needs absolutely must, there's another youth team left back who's Benny.
That's another name I can't pronounce. I think the G in it is silent.
Right, so Bernard.
Benha. Yeah.
Yep, who's also highly rated, who, if we've got a few dead rubbers at the end of the season, you could see getting game time as well. It would make sense if there's a League One club that we can get JJ out to do it.
Yeah, he just needs to play football, needs to play regularly, because he's obviously a talent. England recognise him, the under-18s. And you see that so often with players of that calibre that play in the national youth sides. When they can't get a game, they get out to continue that development, because it'd be a shame to waste that promise that if he's making England sides, that he's just not going to get that many games, isn't he? I think it was a necessity yesterday at Sheffield Wednesday, but how often that happens now with the players that are coming in and the players that are coming back is probably going to be limited.
In this formation, there's no other. I can't see any other. Obviously, if we're playing a back three as a stopgap, you could have him at left centre half, as we have done. But we're not going to. We don't think we're going to play back three. We hope to God we don't play back three. It's JJ. He could very quickly become fourth option at that left back, and then he would get nowhere then.
Yeah, precisely that. I think if they can find him a decent loan, then that would do him the world of good. And then you assess again. With young players, always assess again in the summer, see where they are, because Nelson got that kick on in the summer. He was highly rated by Jones and has played a lot more. And I think it would just make sense for him to go out, particularly with the business that's been happening. That has been good, and it has been aggressive.
Absolutely it has, yeah. No one can complain that they've not lived up to their words, yeah, for sure. And it still, as we just said, we still think there's plenty more business to come. That's pretty much it for this episode of the podcast. There's so much going on at Luton Town right now, isn't there, that we have to cover it all in a fair bit of detail, not least the fact that, I don't know if I mentioned it, but we got a point away from home. We got a point. Only the third time on our travels this season that Luton have failed to lose a game of football. And my word, let's hope there's plenty more, points, if not wins, to come from the remaining away games. Yes. The next podcast will be a deep dive into what's been going on so far this season. We'll really look back at the entire transfer window in amongst that. So if you've got anything that you want to talk about, players, personnel, shape, positions, formations, anything else that you'd like us to discuss in that next podcast, let us have your comments. We're going to try and record that Tuesday night. So if you can get your comments in on this YouTube page, or hit us on social media at Luton Town ST. If you want to do that on Instagram and give us a voice note, feel free to do that, and we'll include that in that as well. And we should get that out to you later in this week. That'll be the next podcast. Don't blame us, blame the rumour mill.
It's been welcome, hasn't it? Yeah, from where we were, and the anger after the Millwall game, to all these signings coming in, there's a real chance that this could turn around. Well, if you listen to Alfie Doughty, there's absolutely no chance that it's going to do anything other than turn around.
To be honest, I listened to Alfie in the Three Counties interview. It's on BBC Sounds if you've not heard it. I was going to go down and have a fiver on us to get promoted.
I mean, I want a pint of whatever Alfie's drinking, to be honest, because we've not had that sort of positivity this season.
I don't know if he's looked at the league table of 2 seasons ago, but fair play to you, Alf. No, you're absolutely right. Do you know what? I listened to it and I thought, cool, that's got some serious, that's going to come back to bite you on the arse shenanigans about it. But then I think back to the last time we were in the Great Escape, and it's around about this time we went to Notts Forest and we lost, and it was on Sky. That's why I remember it so vividly. And then Glenn Ray come out, and he gave this real positive interview, and I was like, Glenda, what on earth have you been soaking up, son? Could not see it at all. And then lo and behold, Glenda has the last laugh because the Great Escape happened. Hey Alfie, if what you've just done, we've been referencing all the last 2 or 3 months about a lack of confidence. No one's fed that into Alfie. He's full of it.
Yeah, well, he hasn't.
And really, so you should be. He's pinging it in from there.
He hasn't had to be responsible or suffer for any of those bad performances. And, his individual performances alone when he was in the team were good and championship leading in the chance creation stat, as we always bring up. So why not? Maybe that change of mindset is all important. And he was talking about fight and heart, I think, as well, that hasn't been there.
And for a player to come out and dig it out for that tells you that there's been a change.
Yeah, I think so. And, we were hoping that the new manager bounce would be instant, but I don't think realistically it was, because
we've gone too low.
So low.
Yeah.
But maybe this is the start of it, and it's just going to be a delayed bounce. And that would be welcome too.
Well, as long as the bounce equals 21st or May the 6th or whenever it is that we play West Brom, that's all that matters. Obviously, much higher would be welcome. That is it for this episode. If you got right through to the end, we thank you. We crammed it all into this one, and hopefully those signings that we've spoken about come off, and the rumours that we've been talking about, players leaving, we'll monitor that as we come and go. Enjoy deadline day, everyone. Sure to be pretty busy, and remember, 11 o'clock Monday evening is when that window closes. And we'll reflect on it all later in the week. Thanks to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio as ever, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. Till next time, which, as I say, will be a review of the transfer window business and a look at the season so far and what we've got to come. From Jimbo and myself, come on, you Atters.
I believe our supporters are the best supporters in the country.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.